Alright, programming is all about modules, breaking things up into smaller pieces and using the pieces to bring things together. Alright, so to start off, we're just going to learn about functions. Later on, as you advance in C++, you'll learn about objects, your classes and stuff of that nature, and structures. Let's learn about the functions. You need to know those before you can do any of those other items. So, you've been working with functions already, you just haven't really called it that. This main here is a function. It has all the parts that define what a function is. A function name, which in this case is main. Parentheses, which we'll learn in a little other video, is where we keep the parameter lists. The int here is a return type, data type, which is why we have the return statement here, and it returns a 0, which is an integer. And then you have the body, which is everything actually between the two curly brackets. Right. This is the function header, right, which has the name, the return type, and parameters if there are any. Always set up curly brackets, the body of it, right, and later on again we'll learn more about the return portion and what it does for us. So this is a function. It's pretty simply, I'm not going to run it, but simply just outputs the message hello world. Alright, so let's add another function to this and make use of it. So I'm going to create what's called a void function, and we'll just call it display message. Alright. And basically what I'm going to do is take these two lines of code, add it here, move it up here, and then I'm going to call that function. To call it is simply put the name of the function there with parentheses and a semicolon. So it should look like this portion, right, with a semicolon at the end. So this is a call to the function. This is actually a function. Right, main uses that function to do what it wants to do, to display, in this case, display a simple message. Right, we'll show you more and more functions as we go through more and more complex problems. But this is the calling of the function. So when a program starts main, comes in here right after the curly bracket, the first thing it finds is this call to the display message. The code physically jumps up to here and starts this function, which comes into these curly brackets, declares that variable, does that cout statement, prints the closing parenthesis for that function is there, so the function ends. And at the same time, what that means is this variable in memory is removed from memory. It's destroyed, it's gone, it's no longer being used until this function is called again. But when this function ends, all that happens and it returns back to this location where the function got called from and continues from this point forward. Alright, so I kind of split the problem up, didn't really simplify much because it's a very simple program, but functions do simplify other parts of the code. And you see the end result's the same. Still prints the same message out. Looks exactly the same as if I did it within main. So in this simple example, it's not saving us anything or making the program any simpler. But the idea behind functions is to break up parts of the program into smaller pieces, easier to understand pieces. Or else once these programs start growing, if you did everything in main would get very large. Right? So we try to make it small and compact. That's one reason. The other reason is sometimes you find yourself writing code multiple times within this main, and that means that code really should be in a function, and you just call the function each time you need it to do that piece of the code, right? That functionality. A difference between these, again, this is still a function header, and this is the function body. This is the function return type, right? This is the function parameter list. Again, just like main, it's empty right now. This is different than main. It's void. It means it doesn't return any data. It has no return type. That's why there's no return statement here. Right? I can change that to an int if I want, but then I have to have a return statement in there. Just like I did in main. Right? But it's useless. Right? We'll show you how to use this better in another video. Now, some compilers, even though it has this int here, this should return a value. Some compilers will allow this. Visual Studio will not allow this. It sees that it should be returning something. It sees it's missing the return statement, so it'll give you an error. It's bad practice not to put that return in if you've got a return type there. Alright, so make sure you're aware of that, and if you're not using Studio, that will get caught by me, because that's all I use is Studio. So make sure you're putting them in. If you're making some return type something, it's got to have that return statement. Alright, so put that back to void. Alright, so there we have our function. It's called. Right, here we're calling the function header. Oops, sorry about that. Is the first line. Right, up here of the function. That's the header of the function, then the body of the function, and the call.